Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amadori, and I'm joined today with a returning guest, Frank from Silver Report Uncut, someone who's become a real star on YouTube, the alternative media, and he doesn't bridle his tongue, and I think that's what a lot of people appreciate about him. When it comes to mainstream news and people on grandiose platforms, you know, they have to fit the mold of the masses. And you know what's good about a guy like Frank is he's going to give it to you straight. He's going to share his truthful opinions, and he's not controlled by the mainstream suppression. So I appreciate about him. Look, we got to talk about the viral stock market crash. You know, gold pulling back here, kind of in 2008 fashion, if you consider we got the bad news about the virus and then gold pulled back at the same time, rather than being, you know, a fear hedge or a flight to safety. It was kind of like this opportunity for everything to sell off. So I want to talk about that and talk about the virus that's been going on and how significant Frank believes this to be, or is it just the flu? So without any further ado, Frank, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I could start. Was that the question, or is that
just a little bit of an intro for what we're going to talk today about? But why don't we start off with like the markets? Discuss gold here first, and then I'd like to go into the virus, if that's okay with you.
No, that's perfect.
We pulled back on gold pretty significantly with the plunge. It was almost like the baby got thrown out with the bathwater, if you ask me. This panic, you know, and it kind of reminded me of 2008. Not as severe of a correction, you know, at least up until now. But I mean, what is your thoughts on gold and the markets right now, based on what we're seeing?
God, what an unbelievable opportunity in gold and silver. This is just so momentary right now. They're like this. The size of this crash is absolutely immense. We saw S&P 500 futures volume. It dropped to all-time lows. You know, we had 4 intraday 1,000-point sell-offs on the Dow Jones. And really the problem is, well, of course, gold is a tremendous opportunity right now. The reason it did sell off, and I actually warned on this in a different interview, that I do anticipate we're going to see a lot of volatility in the gold markets and the silver markets. I'm shocked that it began its, you know, rally so early, because typically, you know, we have big money moving around. We have big money that is moving around. You have margin calls. We had, you know, near record margin debt in the stock market, meaning that these people have been so convinced that the stock market is always going to rise that they were literally taking out debt, anticipating their returns were going to be able to help them to manage that, et cetera, et cetera. So when you have such a deep and broad sell-off going on, people get caught. It's like musical chairs. The music stops. They need to cover, you know, this problem, and it leads to forced selling, mechanical selling. There's a whole bunch of chaos happening on the stock market, and this always happens when it's a deep stock market. This should be a wake-up call to the magnitude of this problem. I think actually it's much, much worse than many people anticipate. I'm shocked that some people have been so convinced that there's no problem, that the Dow's up right now, that people are actually coming back for more. If you think about it, now we have this Bloomberg, right? They said he was worth $62 billion. Now, I just read an article recently saying that after this sell-off, he was worth, I think, 54. So you think about these billionaire mindset. They've lost a lot of money. They've lost a lot of money, but honestly, it's the retail crowd that took the majority of the losses. Whenever you look, like I saw a recent chart from Robinhood, and it was showing the action on Tesla, and it was showing the price drop, how quickly it came down, and it showed the retail interest in Tesla, and it didn't even dip with the price. So they were holding on to Tesla while somebody was leaving with a lot of money. So to me, it sounds crazy that people are stepping back into this market thinking there really is not a problem. They are in for a very, very rude awakening. And I think, you know, similar to 2008, whenever there's a big stock market crash, not everyone loses. Not everyone loses money. Some people have made a tremendous amount of money. Now, we talk about the valuations in the stock market, they're crazy, right? So essentially, how are people making money? They're making money, it's speculation. Everyone puts their money into a big pile. The first person to leave the party with the money, they're the one who really had the gains. Because you don't really have gains until you sell your shares, right? And so some people made a lot of money. Right now, I feel like they are being fleeced. The public is being fleeced into thinking that there's not a problem for the US economy. You should look at what's going on in China right now. They are literally done. You look at the NASA photos, they have no pollution. They're ordering the factories to burn coal to make people believe that things are operating as normal. They don't, I mean, even the president here was suggesting that China is operating as usual. That is absolutely not true. And the reason he would say that is because the problem is so bad. It's so bad. They want to make you feel like this doesn't shut down economies. But guess what? The number one or the number two economy is already brought to a halt. You have Japan. They're about to shut down. They're going to cancel the Olympics. They're canceling large events all over the world, and now also in the United States. It's happening here already. The supply chain disruption is going to be so immense that the people putting their money in the stock market buying the dip, this is not a dip. This is not a dip. And if you look at the action in 2000, when we had that sell-off, it was much the same thing. The same action was going on the NASDAQ. You know, you had that drop and then a dead cat bounce rally that follows very briefly before you hit the real losses. And I think that people are making a critical mistake. And like you said, they think it's the flu. That's the problem. They're being told it's the flu and that there's nothing to worry about. Let me tell you what. Have you guys been looking at the headlines? Have you been looking? They're not coming every day or every couple days. They're coming every hour, every couple hours. The panic has already begun.
So I'd like to peel back the onion there for a second, Frank. If you, what would you tell somebody that is skeptical about this being more than the flu? In the sense that, you know, sure, people are dying. I mean, the confirmed number is what, over 3,000 now. But if you were to compare that to the flu, they'd say, oh, well, it's almost the same. Now, the fear of this is that it's unknown and that it's spreading. But if you look at maybe the more broader statistics, there's people that are sick, getting better, people that are mildly sick. It's a lot of the cases of people dying are similar to the flu. It's the weaker individuals. So what would you tell someone who's skeptical about this being a real issue and these headlines being overblown?
Okay, so the source of this narrative that it is the flu, it begins with Fox News and Rush Limbaugh. They're the ones that began this. Now, Rush Limbaugh was just given a presidential, Medal of Freedom, right? So this is Trump's homie. So, of course, they have a vested interest in keeping the people calm right now. They have to. They have to. It's a breakdown. So they're not willing to admit the truth at this point. Look at the numbers he put out. 16 cases? No. We're above 60 already. And Dr. Anthony Fauci, I just put an update on this on our Twitter at @silver_report. And Dr. Anthony Fauci, he was the guy who was standing next to Trump the other day. He was asked on Fox about what's going on now. And he said that we have community spread in the US. Just 2 days ago, they were saying there was no risk, but that could change, is what they said yesterday. Today, only 2 days later, they're saying it's here, it's ready, it's on the West Coast. But he also was asked whether it is good to compare this to the flu. And he said, quote, clearly it is much more lethal, unquote. And he added that the mortality rate for the flu is 0.1%. And for this particular virus, it is 2 to 2.3%. But we also see in closed cases, it's 7. Because some people who are young and strong, it takes a very, very long time. So really, it's impossible to tabulate the mortality rate at this point. And another thing that is really concerning is the fact that, do you see what they're doing in their streets? How they're sanitizing them, spraying down the streets, because it lives on surfaces. Do you see anything like that happening in the US? No. So if it does develop, and like he said, into community spread, and we're treating it like it's just going to pass through like seasons, no one else in the world has done this. No one else in the world has said, it's only 2%. It's not a big deal. But the real numbers we're seeing are, much higher than 2% so far. I mean, we look in what was going on in Iran initially. Within the first week, they were running at 24.46%. That has come down to 10% now. So in places where they don't have adequate medical care, this thing is very serious. The most concerning thing is the fact that they're not taking it serious. They're telling people it's the flu. I don't know how many people I heard that from. I went to the store. What I would tell the people who are listening here is to buy food. To buy food. The big story that is developing around the world is food. The lines and lines of people looking to go in and get water, get food, things like that. You don't want that to be you. You don't want to get there on day 2 after this shows up in your city, especially if you're in the city.
Well, you said 0.1% for the flu, 2% for the coronavirus. I mean, that's 20 times more lethal at this point. Now, is there any chance that it's just new and they don't know how to treat it yet, or is this is it as bad as
saying?
They say it is? I mean, this is a lot of problems here.
Yeah, certainly. And that doctor, I think it was Wang Li. I can't remember his name right now, but the famous one that they were showing his picture everywhere, and he was 35 years old. It took him 35 days to pass. So, you have these people who are sick, and the problem is that it's just so contagious. And sure, we talk about a percentage of the population, but it's enough to wreck the economy. If it lives on surfaces and people can be reinfected, think about that. You can continuously, if it is in a city and they don't sanitize the streets and people can be reinfected, they pretty much become a dead zone. People could get sick over and over until, it's a very serious ailment. It is not like the flu, for example, which doesn't have that same tenacity, doesn't have that, same virulent nature. It is just sweeping through many nations. You look at that church in Daegu, South Korea, or the cult it was, and they are running somewhere near like 83% of the people who attended that service actually contracted it. And you have a smaller portion, I think it was 600 members who did test positive with no symptoms. So, and you got these people testing positive 27 days later. In Wuhan, they went out and they re-quarantined the people because they were finding some of them were testing positive 14 days later. So you think about this whole cruise ship that they let off, and we tested them, we let them go, they're fine. I mean, it's already probably too late. We're probably going to see and you just watch, look at the headlines and see how this develops within the next couple of days. And eventually people are going to realize that California's economy is so essential for the United States. Many companies are already preparing to have their employees work from home. They're already canceling events. What will we do if the manufacturers in California can no longer produce? Then we're not talking about the supply chain disruption in China. We're talking about what would be, if it was an independent country, the 5th most powerful economy in the world. What do we do? And it's just not California, because the people in those areas, they travel all over the world. People have a lot of money, some of the cities over there. And I mean, how does, my biggest concern is the fact that they are trying to convince people to go out and to live your normal life, come down and visit the Chinatowns, the Surgeon General said, don't wear masks. This kind of, information being put out is really, really concerning to me, because I almost feel like, what are they doing? They feeding us to this?
Frank, obviously, very concerning, especially for those of us with kids, people to protect. I mean, you feel like you're in a spot where you need to be very responsible and defend those that you care about, you love, the elderly. How much of a grind do you believe that this could be for society? I mean, you're talking about food. I mean, supply chains. What could this look like? What is Los Angeles look like? What does Dallas, Texas look like in a real pandemic?
The biggest thing I think that we should be very alert and vigilant in watching is the actions of those in power and our neighbor. Those are the two things that are probably going to impact you the most, because as I see what is probably about to happen is that there are a lot of major population centers in the United States which will be restricted movement very soon. Very soon. And that's going to catch a lot of people off guard. Now, they did tell everyone to go out and have some food. They did tell everyone to go and buy food and to prepare for a disruption, major disruptions in your life. And then they were gagged. They weren't allowed to say that anymore. And my concern is that so many people were being told, don't worry, it's not a big deal. It's not here. There's only 16 people and all of that. These are like critical misconceptions that could really hinder, people's chances. They need to heed the warnings that they should have food on hand, that they should have medical supplies, things that are essential for life, because what happens if you can't get to the store anymore? What happens if you can't leave? What happens if you're dependent on handouts? I mean, how many people could end up losing their jobs? What about the small businesses? That's who's going to take the hit. That's who's taking the hit in China. It's estimated that 85% of the small businesses in China could fail as a result of this. That's huge, because the majority of their hiring is actually done by small and medium-sized businesses. That's if they don't get things operating again. What could that mean for the restaurants who are already struggling with $15 minimum wage? They've been flooding out of California already. That's going to put the rest of them out of business. That's going to put small mom and pops out of business. People in the United States are not prepared for a disruption to come into their lives like that. And to sit there and say, well, it's only the flu, let's ignore it. Let me give you an example of how bad this has become. I was at the store again for the 4th time the other day. I went and picked up some rice. And of course, obviously some other people had begun because I got the last bags. So a lady is watching me. She's got this look in her eyes of disdain. And I could tell why she's looking at me. My face gets flush, it gets hot. I get kind of ashamed a little bit because she's looking at me like, I know why you're buying so much rice and beans. I know what you're doing, right? So I leave the aisle. I go in the next aisle. She comes over and says something to me and says, boy, that's certainly a lot of rice. All I could think is it's not enough. All I could think is it's not enough. And she was actually mad because they're being told this is all a scheme in order to disrupt Trump. And honestly, his popularity was so high, I don't know why he would make, I think this is a critical error for him. I think this is a critical error.
Frank,
it's a worse mistake.
Do you believe any of the rumors that this was started by any specific group, entity, any sort of biological warfare weapon? I mean, what research have you seen that kind of gives you the instinct as to where this possibly came from and, why?
Boy, I hope you're prepared for this one. All right. So they've published this article in several languages. And the first time I read it, immediately I knew where this had come from. So it was an article, and I'm sure many of you have read it, because on Twitter, most of the places you can get information are pretty much blocked at this point. Twitter, they still seem to have some information able to be seen and shared. Anyway, so they paste this to the top page of Twitter, like pretty much like read this about the thing. So it's a whole story about breaking down and debunking myths about this thing. And pretty much there's a whole 2 chapters or a whole 2 paragraphs devoted to how this did not come from Bill Gates. And I'm thinking, what person in the world takes their time to write 2 paragraphs defending Bill Gates? Now, obviously, it probably came from him, but the other entity in there that it was telling people, whatever you do, do not think it came from the CIA, and it was a part of a plan to destroy China's economy. So I'm wondering, when I see this, like, it's impossible to figure this out from my position, seeing how there's so much darkness and secrecy. But when I start seeing so many articles and the fact that it was published in multiple languages, I mean, Bill Gates is the one who said that once it gets to Africa, 10 million are going to be wiped out. Now, he said this 2 days after we started getting the announcements it was here. But in 2018, he wrote that whole article about there's going to be a global pandemic and it could wipe out 60% of the population. It's strange how the growth or how the forecasts for this thing estimate that it will eliminate 60% of the population of the world. So I'm wondering, did he see those growth forecasts ahead of time? Like I said, how am I going to know right now? I swear they've taken a chokehold on information. You can't even speak about it. You can't even talk about it. Whenever you go and try to search for any information, all they present to you is, the liberal media channels. That in itself is enough to make me really concerned. It's really concerning me. Also, the fact that there are so many people. I saw a good friend of mine in the store, and I told her, you better stock up before the food prices go up, because every once in a while I bless someone with this vital information. So I told her, you better stock up for the food prices go up. She said, why would they go up? I said, well, the CDC said you better buy food right now and prepare for major disruptions in your life. And she said, anything to scare the people. We went about her business. This is what we're dealing with. And I don't think, we should not, I just did a video about this morning, but we should not blindly support, I'm a conservative, but we should not blindly support a person just because they're from our side in everything they do. It doesn't mean I don't support their cause or I'm not going to be there if they need me to be. But the point is that we just can't say because he said it, it's okay. That's a real serious danger for our country, because then you start getting into other issues like, they said, red flag is a good thing to go and pass. And well, it's going to help the people. We got to protect the people. Whenever we're just blindly following, that's really, really a bad sign, because we need transparency. We need to be honest. We need to hold our leaders accountable. I think this is a critical error. And very, very soon after they announce it's already through 5 or 6 cities, people are going to say, but I thought you said there was no risk. I looked at you as you looked in the camera and said there was no risk. I think that's a critical error.
That's amazing. And right now, I'm even going on certain food supply websites right now, and everyone's delayed. Everyone's worrying about. There's a lot of demand for these emergency food supplies with what we're seeing right now, and we haven't even got to a point where it is a pandemic yet. Society is still operating normally, and say we do get to a point where, my goodness, 60% of the population dies. We're talking about apocalyptic revolt and rioting in the streets. That would be absolute chaos if we got to a point like that. And I'd like to assume that that's not where we're going, but at the same time, it's so hard to know. There's a lot of unknowns out there. And unfortunately, we're not being told the truth by many of our leaders. And, a guy like yourself is uncovering so many things. So Frank, I mean, if you would just give us some advice, some words of wisdom as we kind of go through the next few weeks here, through the next year. I mean, what can people do to prepare and be ready for what's going to happen in the markets and for their health and the safety of their family?
Yeah, I would my personal feeling is I would be really careful with the stock market right now, because I think it's a time of insane volatility about to break off on many different sectors. We look at the commodities market, and just overnight, before markets even open, we're seeing swings in futures, for the Dow and everything, 700 points. This doesn't happen in a couple hours before the market opens, and that's a good thing. We see commodities getting crushed. We see oil getting crushed. We see, this movement. And I think that, so that's my stance on the markets right now, is I would be very, very careful, very, very careful. But some advice, honestly, and I was going to do a video about this, but I spent $60 on a website called True Leaf Market, and you can get this pack of microgreen seeds, and you can grow microgreens in a sunny window with just a seed tray. And one tray would probably be enough to, it's a superfood. It's got all the vitamins, nutrients, minerals. The sunflower shoots have protein. You can survive. It could end world hunger eating microgreens. And I think it's something that everyone should familiarize themselves with, because in a bind and you can't get access to food, you could grow this in a sunny window. Now, I got much more than a sunny window. I grow food. Some of my prepping has been focused on staples rather than vegetables, but it's really essential to try to secure a long-term food source this is something that should have been done years ago now, but it's something that everyone should focus on doing. And also a Berkey water filter. You see in the lines, the thing that the people are going to go get, it's bottled water, toilet paper. I mean, listen, if it gets really that bad, do you really need to wipe with toilet paper? No. But but the point is, people are running out and they're clearing the shelves of the water, when if you had a Berkey water filter, you could go and filter a puddle if you want to. You can capture rain. You can have unlimited capacity to be able to filter water. And these kinds of things are simple, and they could save your life. Because I do feel like with so many people unprepared, we are going to have a breakdown. I feel so bad for people who are in New York City. I feel so bad for the people in the major cities in California. I feel like it's going to be a nightmare to be in your shoes pretty soon. And I think a lot of people there probably already know that. So securing food, and also right now finding a way to protect yourself and your family when maybe someone won't be there to come and help you when you call. Maybe resources are being used up on a major problem. And whenever you seem to have those kinds of breakdowns, it's, good to be able to walk out and to back off an intruder, back off somebody who would seek. So my main focus the past couple of weeks, I've been working on security, food, and getting out to the store and getting ammo. Because these are the things I've been focused on. I know what is coming. I know these people are going to be hungry. I know they're going to be hungry. And whenever you see people have a desperation, there is nothing that they won't do. Look at Katrina. Don't worry, come to the Superdome. We'll help you. We'll help you. Come on down. And before you know it, 3 days go by, the food's not there anymore. It turns into the Terror Dome. People have no place to go. They're stuck there because their plan was to trust the people in power to help them. That's how much they can help you when a situation is that bad. You need to help yourself.
Good words right there, Frank. I hope everyone has taken what Frank has said today to heart. Get that emergency food supply and be prepared. It's still yet to be fully known what we're going to see unfold, but you definitely don't want to be caught off guard, because as you know, as we've seen with the market, as we've seen with so many things, our sense of normal can unravel so quickly, so fast that we don't have time to prepare in the moment. And I feel like that's where a lot of people are going to be. They're going to be deer in the headlights, unprepared and unable to prepare because it won't be the right environment for it. Now there's some sense of normalcy. But I'll tell you what, if you go on a lot of these emergency food supply places, they're out. They're back ordered for weeks, maybe months. So
they're canceling orders on Amazon too.
It's definitely time to prepare.
You're right.
Frank, thanks so much for coming on Crush the Street with me today. I definitely want to do a follow-up with you in very short order.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.